Is it me? Can I
Important
look
to
at my
note,
cards?
Donnie, and these two were talking about it earlier.
When you are under heavy ICM, solver actually doesn't want to get all in. So it chooses small, small, and then a bet that doesn't quite shove.
Daniel, they don't know you probably. They don't know you, man. They don't know you. They have no clue you are the poker superstar.
That's one of the things that's most interesting about the analysis of high rollers in general is that for the most part, you have a much stronger understanding of what someone can and can't have in specific spots. So the application of theoretical concept is actually in a lot of ways a lot easier when you can clearly define ranges and have a high level of confidence of what someone would do and what they wouldn't do.
Let's do
Wants to win the tournament.
like a bet about $200. No, 200 euros. Make it expensive for the Romanian.
Hey everyone, quick announcement. We are hosting a 3-day online bootcamp with myself, Alex Foxen, and Kristen Foxen, where we will teach you the most important aspects of crushing poker tournaments like live tells, how to build massive stacks, how to crush multi-way pots, and a lot more. This 3-day online bootcamp will take place on November 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, and you can check out the link in the description for more information. All right, now let's get back to the video. Okay, the first hand we're going to go over, if you haven't seen this one yet, then you basically don't follow anyone on poker social media.
Yeah, I imagine you won't be here either, but this is a sick hand.
So he raises EP, Negreanu flats ace jack suited, Peters calls ace jack O.
Oh my God.
And I feel like we'd be doing this a disservice if we didn't let you guys just listen to Kabrhel talk a little bit here.
Yeah.
How is this
Really?
possible?
Is it me?
And it's
Can I
important
look
to
at my
note,
cards?
Donnie, and these two were talking about it earlier. Negreanu will care the least out of anybody.
Is it me?
It's the bubble. Like
Daniel
you've
doesn't
heard
look
it in the
happy.
vlog,
David,
right?
He never
Not
looks
nearly as
happy.
ICM conscious.
So, let's do
Wants to win the tournament.
like a bet about $200. No, 200 euros. Make it expensive for the Romanian.
Who's Romanian, Negreanu?
Yeah, he is actually. Yeah. See, this is where like you gotta respect this guy, man. He's just like where does he come up with this? It's like it's so like quick witted. I don't know. $200? Nope, euros. Make it expensive for the Romanian. Like I don't know. That doesn't even seem like a canned line. He just like that's just off the top of his head.
Profit. You have 2 bullets? 2 bullets, yeah? 16,000 profit. It's not bad for you for today's work. It's not bad.
750.
Whatever's meant to be.
Check raise from D. Peters makes it 750,000. Like there's a world where it goes.
How do you feel about the quarter pot sizing here? So if he were to have called, it would have been 2.1 out there, 25% of that more, 550 more.
I think it's probably, fine at this step. I would like a little bit bigger. I'd imagine that from the perspective of like a solver, you would just have really small bets, raises on this size because generally, a range is pretty polarized. So
and when you're on like heavy ICM, so you're on the like hard bubble here, I think it is the stone bubble maybe. When you are under heavy ICM, solver actually doesn't want to get all in, so it chooses small, small, and then a bet that doesn't quite shove. So that's one thing that like is a good logic. But let's just say you're not at an ICM juncture.
Well, in that case, I could actually understand it with this combo specifically. Like from a logical perspective, this combo makes a lot of sense if you're going to raise small because you're actually, the range of hands you're trying to get value from is relatively thin, which is why I think a lot of people wouldn't raise this spot. I don't necessarily think that's like the right decision or better. I do like the raise here for a number of reasons, especially versus this min bet. I think it's a min bet, yeah. But the reason why a lot of people wouldn't raise here is because from like a purely, logical, like non-theoretical perspective, you're going to say like, what calls me? What do I get called by? Well, like the answer is pretty obvious. It's like worst jacks, worst pocket tens, pocket nines, maybe a hand like ace queen, ace king with the spade, 9-10 suited, maybe queen 10 with a spade. Like there's a number of hands that will get value from here. And when you have the bottom of your value range, we're kind of incentivized to expand the continue range of our opponents by making smaller bet sizes in order to make sure that we do get called by a sufficient number of hands that we beat. So from that perspective, I think the small size does make sense. And then additionally, from like the theoretical perspective, a lot of our value hands are going to have very little incentive to deny equity and also want to get as much value as possible. SPR is relatively low. he makes it 750 and gets called in one spot, let's say, and all the SPR is going to be a little over 2 going to the turn. That's pretty easy to get the money in. So we don't necessarily need to raise any bigger.
And I also think it's worth noting that Negreanu flatting the cutoff here on the stone bubble probably has 0 8x in his range. Like doesn't have 8-9 suited, doesn't have ace-8 suited. Like literally has 0.
He's 33 bigs effective. I don't think there's a single 8 that he flats here with.
Yeah. And that's like one of the differences about playing high stakes. Like Foxen and I have both played 10,000 hours. Like I don't know how many hours with Negreanu, but a lot.
Yeah.
And so like we can say with confidence, he does not have an 8 here ever. Yes, under the gun does at some frequency. But yeah, like those little intricacies about like when you're very confident after playing with someone for thousands of hours makes it a little easier to find their range.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's most interesting about the analysis of high rollers in general is that for the most part, you have a much stronger understanding of what someone can and can't have in specific spots. So the application of theoretical concepts is actually in a lot of ways a lot easier when you can clearly define ranges and have a high level of confidence of what someone would do and what they wouldn't do.
So Peters makes it 550 more, and then it looks like this is through 675 on top. So he clicks it, which I think is fine. I don't really think we can talk too much about this. Like most of the time we're going to call, we can re-raise at some frequency, deny equity from some of the flush draws behind that Negreanu might have. But yeah, no reason to really get too deep in the weeds here.
Yeah. Yeah, the 3-bet's cool.
Fold out of D-negs, understandable.
I said.
And as Martin, he gets away with, I think, shit like this extra because all of his antics, he does play a little weird sometimes. You can't just make like really tight folds versus him here. This click range is not, super imbalanced or anything.
Coming in. Peters, ace of spades in his hand.
Now the hand gets pretty interesting. Peters picks up the nut flush draw, but now he picks up the nut flush draw, but the relative strength of his jack is basically like nothing now. Versus this 3-bet range. Yeah, he really doesn't beat much that 3-bet, and especially because you would expect a good amount of Kabrhel's 3-bet bluffs on the flop to include the ace of spades in some capacity. So I'd be really uncomfortable as Peters now on this turn.
Yeah, but at the same time, uncomfortable, don't really beat anything, but you also have a full house draw and the nut flush draw. So
and you're playing against someone who's liable to just do something completely ridiculous every now and then.
Yeah, exactly. It is worth noting that from a pre-flop perspective, which is always, like I said, in general where the hand starts, Kabrhel raised under the gun, which you can see here, and it's tolerating the chip leader's button. And I actually remember watching this hours of this particular coverage, and Tolerating really didn't do much versus Martin. He was incredibly card dead. But in general, when the second stack or one of the bigger stacks opens on the chip leader's button, their range should be a little bit tighter. However, Kabrhel might have thought that Tolerating just really wanted to cash, not knowing that he's just like one of the sickest there is. But he just happened to look down at the 7-3-0 every hand.
Also, you have the fact that he has 10-8 suited. And he's under the gun. So Martin is definitely the type of player that's going to try to take advantage of a perceived strong range here and knows that he can't just get 3-bet relentlessly in this spot. And he does have a reasonable hand. It's not like he has some complete dust. So I think it's like a fine open, but also a spot where it's kind of weird to try to find 8s in his range.
So we 3-bet the flop, get called, land on the turn with 10-8 suited here. What are you thinking? I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm not going to be good very often. Like my opponent would have had to check raise the flop with just a jack and call, or somehow have a worse 8.
Which I think are both maybe more reasonable or more likely than it might seem at first glance. The worst 8 is relatively likely, although it would need to be suited. I don't think 8-7-0 is getting defended here. I don't think 8-9-0 is getting defended here as David. I don't think that they're even, the jacks are going to be specifically these ace jack, maybe king of spades jack combos. So as Martin, I wouldn't be thrilled to put a ton of money in the pot.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Checks back.
So he checks behind, which I like. River brings a 9, and I think Peters doesn't really have any options here, except for to check.
I think that this is where Martin went wrong. Well, I actually think the turn is where he went wrong, honestly. I think that I'm not eager to get a ton of money in the pot, like I said. However, I think the way to achieve that is actually by betting small on the turn while our range remains uncapped, and we're not going to get raised by better hands or bluffs ever, and with the intention of checking back the river. I think now when we check back the turn, all of a sudden we cap ourselves relatively significantly. Sure, we have some traps, so we're not entirely capped, but our likelihood of having something better than one pair or like weak trips goes pretty low once we check back the turn. So I would have liked to see Martin bet quarter pot or third pot on the turn with the intention of checking back the river. Not so much like kind of one of those bets where it's like, I'm not really sure what I get called by that I beat, but there's some like this ace of spades jack combo, for example. There are still 3 of those that exist. And then also I get to not have to face a river bet from a flush on or potentially get bluffed. So I would have liked to see a small bet on the turn instead of doing this like weird small or this like 40% pot size on the river.
Yeah, I mean, and once we do check back the turn, it's nearly impossible for us to get called by worse on the river. And so I really would like to see Martin just check back this river. Like, I think the worst part of this hand is this river bet. Like, this is an absolute torch. Your opponent is going to fold or maybe do something else with a hand like this, but you're not going to get called by worse.
Yeah. And this is a perfect example. Like ace of spades jack is turning itself into a bluff. What do you get called by? If this hand isn't calling, what do you get called by? 9-8 improves. Like that's the other thing is like one of the 8s we beat just got there too.
Yeah. I love how the announcers have said nothing about raising his hand. Like it's the nut bluff combo other than jack 9, which he doesn't land here with.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes it the nut bluff combo. So it's like it's funny. I love when that happens actually when I'm watching these and you're like you're sitting there thinking like is it a fold or a raise? And you hear the announcers like, I don't know what he can beat here. I think you just got to lay this one down. And it's like there are 3 options. And yeah, David, not good for David pulling the trigger here. This is not easy to do. I mean, it's a 250K, it's the direct bubble. But Martin set himself up for this one. He put himself in the spot where he's going to be really capped, and he kind of, even his sizing on the river kind of just turns his hand face up.
Yeah, I think Martin just butchered this river as bad as humanly possible. He loses 2 million instead of making 2 million. Like it's a big mistake. Yeah.
Big swing, really big swing. Yeah. Yeah. Especially in this like at this stage of the tournament, for him to just take the pot, it was what is it? It was about 5 million in the pot, or a little bit less, 4.8 before he bet. So it's a 6.8 million swing. He loses. Instead of gaining the 4.8 that's in the pot, he loses 2 and doesn't get it. And he would have been second in chips, had a decent opportunity to leapfrog Ben as the chip leader, or if not, at least be able to like leverage his stack a little bit more than he was able prior to that hand, and just like secure a nice profit. Instead he loses
and in these really small fields when there's 11 left and 10 pay, the bubbles could last a really long time. Like I don't know what stacks are like at your table, but here even now there's only 2 players that are short and they still both have more than 20 big blinds. Like this could take hours, right? So the future equity of having 13.5 million or whatever the amount he would have had is significant. And it's just such a big mistake to not really think about the future stack equity. I think he just got so greedy here.
Yeah. That's one of the hardest things about poker tournaments in general is keeping all of these different factors in your mind when making a decision in 30 seconds. And I think it's just one of those where he almost like didn't consider the option that David might bluff him. I think.
Yeah.
Like he didn't even think about calling the river. Like he no thought at all. Like he was for sure.
For someone who takes minutes on every like big decision, and he did this in like 15 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't like he did it in 15 seconds where he thought for 15 seconds. It was like he instantly was folding and he just like waited 15 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, super fun one. Happy we got to see it again.